She was dressing for someone. I just didn't know it wasn't me. I came home early that Tuesday with flowers in my hand and 8 years of marriage in my chest. Anniversary tomorrow. Wanted to surprise her. The house was quiet. Too quiet for 6:30 on a weeknight. I found her in the bedroom, standing in front of the full-length mirror, adjusting a black dress I'd never seen before. Short, tight. The fabric clung to her like it was keeping secrets. She was clearly wearing nothing underneath. Every line of her body announced it. She didn't see me in the doorway. She was smiling. Not at me, at herself, at whoever she was about to become. Going somewhere? I asked. And the way her face changed, that split second before she rebuilt the lie, told me everything the next 6 weeks would only confirm. The flowers felt heavy in my hand, like holding evidence at my own funeral. She had an answer for the dress. She had an answer for everything. The problem was, I'd stopped believing in answers. Lana recovered like a woman who'd practiced recovery her whole life. The surprise on her face folded itself away, replaced by something warmer, more familiar, the mask I'd apparently been married to for years. "Brent, you scared me." She turned from the mirror, one hand smoothing the dress over her hip. "You're home early. I wanted to surprise you." I held up the flowers, roses, red. Suddenly, they felt like props in someone else's play. "Anniversary's tomorrow." "Oh, baby." She crossed the room, took the flowers, pressed her lips to my cheek. I could smell her perfume, something new, something I didn't recognize. "These are beautiful. Let me put them in water." She moved past me toward the kitchen, and I watched her go. The dress moved with her like it knew her better than I did. "What's the occasion?" I asked, following. "The dress. Office party tomorrow night. Remember I told you last week?" She didn't. I would have remembered a dress like that. But I nodded, because that's what Brent Callahan does. He maintains. He smooths. He keeps the machinery running, even when he can hear something grinding in the gears. "You look nice," I said. "Thank you." She filled a vase at the sink, her back to me. "How was work?" We talked about work. We talked about dinner. We talked about everything, except the thing that was sitting in the room with us, breathing quietly in the corner. That night, she showered longer than usual. I lay in bed listening to the water run, staring at the ceiling, replaying the smiles she'd given her reflection. That wasn't for me. That was rehearsal. 3 days passed. 3 days of coffee, and commutes, and conjugal small talk. 3 days of watching my wife perform a marriage, while I pretended not to notice the performance. Saturday morning, Lana left for yoga at 9, or wherever yoga had become code for. I stood at the kitchen window and watched her car disappear down the street. Then I didn't move for a full minute, just stood there, breathing. I wasn't looking for anything. That's what I told myself. I needed the car registration for the insurance renewal. Lana kept it in her gym bag. She'd mentioned that once, months ago, when I couldn't find it in the filing cabinet. So I went to the closet, unzipped the bag. The registration was there in a side pocket. So was the phone. Second phone, prepaid. Rose gold case. Her color, her aesthetic. The screen was still warm. One notification visible through the lock screen. "Can't wait for tonight. Wear the black one." I stood in our bathroom, holding that phone like a man holding his own autopsy report. The registration fell from my other hand. I didn't pick it up. 8 years, 2,000 breakfasts. A mortgage we'd paid down together. A retirement plan with both our names on it. Thanksgiving with her family. Christmas with mine. All of it. Costume design. Set dressing. The elaborate production of a marriage that only one of us was actually living. The phone buzzed in my hand. "You there?" My thumb hovered over the screen. I could respond. I could demand to know who this was. I could call Lana right now and tell her to come home, tell her I knew, tell her everything was over. Instead, I did something my father taught me without ever meaning to. I put the phone back. Exactly where I found it. Same angle, same position, zipped the bag closed, not yet. My father worked at the Youngstown steel mill for 31 years. He wasn't a talker, wasn't a hugger, but he taught me things in the spaces between words. "Don't swing until you know where they're standing," he'd say when I came home bloody from some schoolyard fight. "You want to hit a man, you better know where he's going to fall. Otherwise, you're just making noise." I didn't know where Lana would fall. Not yet. I didn't know who D was. Didn't know how long this had been going on. Didn't know if it was a fling or something worse, something with roots, something with plans. But I was going to find out. Something shifted in my chest that morning. The part of me that wanted to scream, that wanted to throw things, that wanted to grab her by the shoulders and demand to know why. That part went quiet, went cold, went somewhere deep where it could watch without being seen. I'd spent 20 years climbing out of Youngstown, building a life that looked nothing like my father's. Climate-controlled office instead of a factory floor, retirement account instead of a union pension. A wife who wore yoga pants and drank oat milk lattes instead of a woman who aged 20 years in 10 from the stress of never having enough. But some things don't leave you, some things just wait. The kid from Youngstown was awake now, the one who learned early that showing your hand gets you hurt, the one who understood that patience isn't weakness. It's the blade you sharpen while your enemy thinks you're sleeping. That night, Lana came home at 7. Her hair was damp. Showered somewhere else, I realized. Washed away whatever evidence clung to her skin. She kissed my cheek at the door. How was yoga? Good. She smiled. I'm getting more flexible. So am I thought. More flexible with the truth. We ate dinner, watched television. She fell asleep with her head on my shoulder during some show I couldn't have named if my life depended on it. I looked down at her face. Peaceful. Beautiful, still. In the way that had made me believe I'd finally found something permanent. My thumb found my wedding ring, turned it slowly. A habit I'd had for years. A small, unconscious gesture of comfort. It didn't feel like comfort anymore. It felt like evidence. A metal lie wrapped around my finger, but I didn't take it off. Not yet. I was going to need it. The ring, the routine, the performance of a husband who didn't know. All of it would be useful in the weeks to come. My father died at 58. Heart attack? On the factory floor. Never saw retirement. Never met his grandchildren. Never got to rest. But he taught me one thing that mattered more than rest. Measure twice. Cut once. I was measuring now. And when I finally cut, Lana wouldn't see it coming until the blade was already through. The hardest part wasn't pretending I didn't know. It was pretending I still cared enough to pretend. Monday came, like every Monday before it. Coffee brewing, NPR murmuring from the kitchen speaker, Lana moving through her morning routine with the efficiency of a woman who'd optimized her life down to the minute. I watched her now. That was new. Not the way a husband watches his wife. Absent-minded, familiar, half-seeing. I watched her the way you watch a stranger on a subway platform. Cataloging, noting, building a file. The way she checked her regular phone first, then let her eyes drift toward the gym bag hanging on its hook by the door. The way she said, "love you," as she grabbed her keys, the words landing somewhere to the left of my face, already aimed at the door. The way she was there and not there, present and departed, her body going through motions her mind had abandoned months ago. Have a good day, I said. You too, babe. The door closed. Her car started. I stood at the window and watched her taillights disappear, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. Relief that I could stop performing for the next 10 hours. Relief that I could let my face do whatever it wanted without her there to read it. Relief that the exhaustion of pretending to be the man she thought she'd fooled could finally, briefly, rest. Work was a mercy that week. Spreadsheets don't lie to you. Supply chains don't pretend to love you while planning their escape. The clean logic of logistics, trucks moving, inventory flowing, problem solving, felt like a language I could still trust. But even there, the mask was slipping. Tuesday evening, late. The office mostly empty, just the cleaning crew and the security desk and me, still staring at a screen I'd stopped seeing an hour ago. Mr. Callahan, I turned. Paul Okonkwo stood in my doorway, 6'2", silver at the temples, wearing the quiet authority of a man who'd seen enough of the world to stop being impressed by any of it. Night security supervisor. We'd exchanged nods for years, occasional small talk about weather and weekend plans. I'd written him a recommendation once when his daughter applied to Duke. Paul, working late? Always. And he didn't move from the doorway. Just stood there, studying me with eyes that had learned to read people in places harder than a Charlotte office building. You look like a man carrying something too heavy. I almost laughed. Almost told him everything. The urge rose in my chest like bile, to just say it, to let the poison out, to hear another human being confirm that yes, this was real, yes, this was happening, yes. My life was a crime scene and I was only now finding the body. Instead, I said, "Long week." Paul nodded slowly. He didn't believe me. We both knew it. I carried something like that once, he said. 14 years ago, my wife, my cousin. A pause. You know what saved me? I waited. Knowing the difference between justice and destruction. His voice was low, steady, the cadence of a man who'd rehearsed this truth until it became bone. Justice, you recover from, you rebuild, you find yourself on the other side, different but whole. He paused. Destruction, that's just two people burning. And fire doesn't care who lit the match. He held my gaze for a moment longer, then nodded once and moved on down the hallway, his footsteps echoing against the tile. I sat in the silence he left behind, my wedding ring suddenly heavy on my finger, justice or destruction. I wasn't sure yet which one I wanted, maybe both. Maybe I wanted to watch her burn and then walk through the ashes to something cleaner on the other side. But Paul's words stayed with me, lodged somewhere between my ribs like a splinter I couldn't quite reach. Wednesday night, Lana made dinner. This was notable. Lana hadn't cooked in months. Takeout containers and DoorDash bags had become the wallpaper of our evenings. neither of us commenting on what that meant. But here she was, standing at the stove, stirring something that smelled like garlic and wine and effort. Chicken parmesan, my favorite. A dish she used to make early in our marriage, back when we still had things to prove to each other. "What's the occasion?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe. She glanced over her shoulder, smiled. "Does there have to be one? Can't I just make dinner for my husband?" "Your husband." The word used to mean something. "Smells great," I said, and I moved to set the table because that's what husbands do. They set tables. They open wine. They pretend the woman cooking for them isn't rehearsing for a life that doesn't include them. We ate. She talked about work, some compliance issue, some difficult client, the usual white noise of professional life. I nodded in the right places, asked follow-up questions, performed the role of interested spouse with the precision of a man who'd finally realized it was all performance. All the time, and the only question was how long the show would run. "This is nice," Lana said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. "We should do this more." Her fingers were warm, her eyes were soft, and for one terrible moment I almost believed her. I looked at her hand on mine, the ring on her finger, the one I'd put there 8 years ago, in front of her parents and mine, in front of God and the Commonwealth of Virginia, in front of a future we'd sketched together in late-night conversations that I now understood were only real for one of us. "Yeah," I said, "we should." She squeezed my hand, held my gaze with something that looked like sincerity, felt like sincerity, probably even believed itself to be sincerity in that moment. "I'm not going anywhere," she said. "You know that, right?" The words landed like a slap disguised as a kiss. "I'm not going anywhere." The same promise she'd made on our wedding night, her head on my chest, the hotel sheets tangled around us. "I'm not going anywhere, Brent. You're stuck with me." I'd believed her then. I'd built a life on believing her. "I know," I said. And I smiled, because that's what husbands do when their wives lie to their faces over chicken parmesan and candlelight. After dinner, we watched television, some crime drama. The irony wasn't lost on me. She fell asleep on the couch, her breathing going slow and even, and I sat there in the blue glow of the screen thinking about Paul's words. Justice or destruction. I still didn't know the answer, but I knew I needed help finding it. Thursday, lunch break. I found Marcus Webb in the server room, where he spent most of his days, surrounded by humming machines and blinking lights. The room was cold, data centers always are, and Marcus looked up from his terminal with the alert stillness of a man who'd learned to read, approaching footsteps in places where misreading them meant death. "Brent," he nodded. "You lost?" "Need to talk. Off the record." Something shifted in his face. The corporate politeness fell away, replaced by something older, sharper. The soldier beneath the IT badge. "Close the door." I did. The server hum wrapped around us like white noise, like privacy, like the sound of secrets being kept. "I need a favor," I said. "The kind that doesn't show up in any system." Marcus leaned back in his chair, studied me. We'd known each other 5 years. I'd hired him when his resume was a patchwork of military service and short-term contracts. When other managers saw a risk and I saw a man who knew how to solve problems under pressure. "What kind of favor?" "The kind that requires someone who knows how to look without being seen." A long pause. The servers hummed. Somewhere in the building, normal people were having normal lunches, living normal lives untouched by the specific gravity of betrayal. "Who are we looking at?" I took a breath, let it out. "My wife." Marcus didn't flinch. Didn't offer sympathy or platitudes. He just nodded once, slow, like a man confirming something he'd already suspected. "When do you need it?" "Soon, but clean. Nothing that traces back." "Clean I can do." He turned back to his terminal, fingers already moving. "But Brent, I need you to hear me on something." "What?" He stopped typing. Looked at me with eyes that had seen Kandahar, that had seen friends die in dust and noise, that had learned the difference between necessary violence and the other kind. "You sure you want to know everything? Because once you do, you can't unknow it. You carry it forever." I thought about the phone in the gym bag, the notification from D, the dress in the mirror, and the smile that wasn't for me. "I'm already carrying it," I said. "I just need to know what it weighs." Marcus held my gaze for another moment, then he nodded. "All right, give me the phone when you can. I'll tell you what I find." I walked out of the server room with something I hadn't felt since Saturday morning. Purpose. The phone held 6 months of messages, 6 months of baby and miss you and soon, 6 months of my wife being someone else's future. Saturday night, Marcus's apartment. He lived in a complex off South Boulevard. The kind of place where nobody asked questions and everybody minded their own business. 3rd floor, blackout curtains, the faint hum of electronics bleeding through the walls before he even opened the door. "You bring it?" I handed him the phone, rose gold case, prepaid number, the artifact of my wife's other life. He led me inside. 2 laptops open on a desk cluttered with cables and external drives. A single lamp casting yellow light across the workspace. The rest of the apartment was Spartan, military neat, nothing personal on the walls, a couch that looked like it had never been sat on. "Sit," Marcus said. "This takes about 20 minutes. I sat, watched him work. His fingers moved across the keyboard with the efficiency of a man who'd done this before, in places where the stakes were higher than a broken marriage. "Once I clone it," he said, not looking up, "you'll have everything. Messages, photos, GPS history. Every place she said she was versus where she actually went." "Good. But Brent," he stopped typing, turned to face me. "I need you to hear me. Once you see this, you can't unsee it. It lives in you. Changes the way you remember things. Every good memory gets contaminated." I thought about the chicken parmesan. The hand on mine. I'm not going anywhere. I'm ready. Marcus held my gaze for a moment longer, then nodded and turned back to his work. The progress bar filled, slowly, like watching a wound open in real time. The contents of Lana's Second Life downloaded onto Marcus's laptop in neat folders. Messages, photos, location data, 6 months of betrayal organized and searchable. Marcus pulled up the messages first. Scrolled through them with the clinical detachment of a man reading someone else's autopsy report. "His name's Derek," Marcus said. "She's got him saved as D, but his full name shows up in some of the older threads. Derek Vance." I knew the name. Lana had mentioned him. Co-worker, sales department. Kind of annoying, but harmless. She'd described him once at a dinner party as the guy who thinks he's funnier than he is. Now I was looking at 6 months of messages where she called him baby, where she told him she missed him, where she made plans to meet him at hotels I'd never heard of, in parking garages, once in the back of his car, like teenagers with something to hide. "There's more," Marcus said. His voice had changed, harder now. "Look at this." He scrolled to a different thread, Lana and Derek, but the tone was different. Less romance, more transaction. Lana: "Here's another 5K. Should hold them off for a few weeks." Derek: "You're saving my life. I mean it." Lana: "Just get this under control. I can't keep doing this." Derek: "I know. I'm working on it. The tables will turn. They always do." Lana: "They better. I'm pulling from escrow now. If anyone audits before Q3, I'm done. I read the words twice, 3 times. The meaning assembling itself slowly, like a picture coming into focus. "She's not just cheating," Marcus said quietly. "She's embezzling, moving money from her company to cover his debts." "What kind of debts?" Marcus pulled up another screen. "Bank records somehow obtained." I didn't ask how. Wire transfers from an account I didn't recognize to various recipients with names that meant nothing to me. "Gambling," Marcus said. "The amounts, the frequency, the recipients, these are bookies. Collection services. The kind of a people who don't send polite letters when you're late." I stared at the screen. The number swam in front of me, $47,000. That's what she'd moved over 14 months. $47,000, stolen from Mercer Holt Financial Services to cover the gambling debts of a man she was sleeping with behind my back. "This isn't just an affair," I said. The words came out flat, hollow. "This is a felony." "Multiple felonies." Marcus leaned back. "Wire fraud, embezzlement, potentially conspiracy, depending on how involved she was in his actual gambling." He paused. "Brent, this changes things. You understand that, right? This isn't just divorce territory. This is prison territory." I didn't answer. I was still looking at the messages. Still reading the words my wife had typed to another man while I slept in the next room, while I made her coffee, while I believed the lies she fed me like medicine. Lana: "Once this deal closes, I'm telling him, spring at the latest." Derek: "Can't wait to wake up next to you every day." Lana: "Soon, baby, soon. Spring." She was going to leave me in the spring, after the deal closed, whatever deal that meant. After she'd secured whatever exit strategy she and Derek had constructed together, I was a placeholder, a stepping stone, a man-shaped piece of furniture she was planning to discard when the season changed. "You okay?" Marcus asked. I looked up, found his eyes. Saw something there I hadn't expected. Not pity, but recognition. The look of a soldier who's watched a man take his first bullet. "No," I said, "but I will be." That night, I sat on my back porch in Charlotte with a bourbon I hadn't touched and my phone pressed to my ear. The line rang twice before my brother picked up. "Little brother?" Tom's voice carried the gravel of Youngstown. Blue-collar vowels, no wasted words. "It's late. You okay?" "No." Silence on the line, the kind of silence that means I'm listening. I found out some things about Lana. "How bad?" I watched the ice shift in my glass. Watched the amber liquid catch the porch light, Bad enough that I'm thinking about things Dad would have been ashamed of. Tom exhaled slowly. I could picture him in his kitchen. The same kitchen we grew up in. The one he'd bought from Mom after Dad died. The linoleum still cracked in the corner where I'd dropped a cast iron pan when I was 12. Dad loved you, Tom said. But he didn't always understand you. You were always the planner. The one who measured twice, made lists, thought things through. A pause. So whatever you're thinking, make sure you know the cost. All of it. Not just what it costs her, what it costs you. What if the cost is worth it? That's not the question. His voice was quiet now. Serious. The question is, who are you after you've paid it? Because that man, the one standing in the ashes, he's the one who has to live the rest of your life. Not the man you are right now. Not the man who's hurting. The one who comes after. I didn't have an answer for that. The bourbon sat untouched. The night pressed in around me, heavy with crickets and humidity and the weight of decisions not yet made. I gotta go, I said. Brent. Yeah? Call me before you do whatever you're gonna do. Just call me first. I will. I hung up. I didn't know if I was lying. Sunday, Lana and I went to brunch. This was her idea. A place in South End with exposed brick and avocado toast and couples who looked like us, dressed like us, performed happiness the way we were performing it now. She talked about her week. I nodded. She showed me something on her phone, her regular phone, the safe one, the one that held the version of her life I was supposed to believe in. Oh, the gala's coming up, she said, scrolling through her calendar. November 14th, Mercer Holt's annual charity thing? You'll come, right? Wouldn't miss it. She smiled, reached across the table, touched my hand the way she'd touched it over chicken parmesan, the way she'd touched it 100 times before. I knew what her hands did when I wasn't watching. I love that you support me, she said. Not every husband would come to these things. Not every husband knows what I know. That's what husbands do, I said. For a moment, one terrible, treacherous moment, I looked at her and felt something other than rage. I felt sad, not for myself, for us. For the thing we could have been if she'd ever told me she was drowning, if she'd ever looked at me and said, I'm unhappy, I'm lost, I need something you're not giving me. I would have listened. I would have tried. But she didn't. She chose Derek. She chose theft. She chose to build an escape hatch out of my blindness and her employer's money. Why didn't you just tell me? The question sat in my chest like a stone. I knew I'd never ask it out loud. Some answers cost more than the questions are worth. You okay? Lana asked. You seem far away. I smiled, squeezed her hand. Just thinking about work, big week coming up. She had no idea how big. I heard her laugh. That same laugh from the mirror. Only this time, I knew exactly who it was for. Thursday night, November 10th. 4 days before the gala, I came home quiet, not sneaking, just quiet. The way you move when you've stopped announcing yourself in your own house. The way you move when you've learned that the element of surprise is the only advantage you have left. The front door closed softly behind me. The foyer was dim. From the kitchen, I could hear Lana's voice. Low, intimate, the register she used when she thought she was alone. I didn't move. Just stood there in the hallway, keys still in my hand, listening. Baby, stick to the plan. Her voice was light, almost playful. Spring's only 4 months away. Once this deal closes, I'm telling him. A pause. She laughed. That laugh, the one from the mirror, the one that had never been mine. I know. But we have to be smart about this. He's not stupid. Just trusting. There's a difference. Another pause. Longer this time. I love you too. See you tomorrow. I heard her phone click. Heard her footsteps approach the kitchen doorway. She turned the corner and saw me standing there. For 1 second, maybe less, her face showed everything. Surprise, fear. The rapid calculation of a woman whose mask had slipped at the worst possible moment. Then she rebuilt, right in front of me. I watched the construction happen in real time. The fear smoothing into confusion, the confusion softening into innocent concern. Brent, how long have you been standing there? Long enough. She tilted her head, frowned slightly. The performance of a woman who had nothing to hide? Long enough for what? I was just talking to my mom about. Don't. The word came out harder than I intended. She flinched. Brent, what's going on? You're scaring me. I walked past her into the kitchen, set my keys on the counter, took a breath, let it out. I know about Derek. Silence. I know about the money, the transfers, the escrow accounts you've been draining to cover his gambling debts. More silence. The refrigerator hummed. The clock on the wall ticked. Somewhere outside, a dog barked twice and then went quiet. I know about all of it, Lana. When I turned to face her, the mask was gone. What remained was something I'd never seen before. Not guilt exactly, but the exhaustion of a woman whose performance had finally been canceled. How long? She asked. Her voice was small now, stripped of the music. Weeks, since the phone. The... She stopped. Her hand went to her mouth. You found the phone. I found the phone. She leaned against the doorframe. For a moment, I thought she might cry. Part of me, some ancient stupid part that still remembered loving her, hoped she would. Hoped she'd collapse. Hoped she'd beg. Hoped she'd say something that would make the last 8 years mean something, even if that something was just honest regret. Instead, she straightened, crossed her arms. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You don't understand. Derek, he's in trouble. Real trouble. There are people, dangerous people, and I was trying to help him. I was going to pay it back. I have a plan. A plan. The sound surprised me. Dry, hollow, scraped from somewhere I didn't recognize. You have a plan. That's perfect, because so do I. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my wedding ring. 8 years of marriage, compressed into a circle of gold. I'd worn it every day since she'd slid it onto my finger at the altar. I'd worn it through promotions and arguments and reconciliations. I'd worn it while she was in hotel rooms with another man, while she was transferring stolen money to cover his sins, while she was planning her escape route out of my life. I set it on the counter between us. Brent, I know about the gala, I said. November 14th, Mercer Holt's annual charity event. Derek will be there. Richard Holt will be there. 300 of your colleagues and clients and the people whose money you've been stealing. I paused. I'll be there too. Something shifted in her face, the first crack of real fear. What are you going to do? I'm going to the gala on Saturday. I think you should too. Brent, whatever you're planning, you had 6 months to tell me the truth. 6 months to look me in the eye and say I'm unhappy. I made a mistake. I need help. I would have listened. I would have tried. I shook my head. But you didn't. You chose him. You chose theft. You chose to treat me like a prop in your little production while you built your exit strategy out of my blindness and someone else's money. That's not fair. You don't understand what it's been like. You're right. I picked up my keys. I don't understand, and I don't want to anymore. I walked past her toward the stairs, toward the guest room where I'd been sleeping for days, toward whatever came next. Brent, I stopped, didn't turn around. Please, her voice cracked. Please don't do this. Whatever you're planning. It won't just hurt me, it'll hurt you too. You'll destroy both of us. I stood there in the hallway, my back to her, my hand on the banister. The house was silent. The air was thick with everything we weren't saying. You destroyed us a long time ago, I said. I'm just finally burying the body. I climbed the stairs. The guest room door closed behind me with a soft click. Below I heard nothing, no sobbing, no pleading, just silence. The kind of silence that falls when two people finally stop pretending they're in the same marriage. I lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. 4 days. 4 days until the gala. 4 days until everyone she'd ever worked with, everyone she'd ever impressed, everyone she'd built her professional life around would see exactly who she was. My thumb moved to my ring finger. Found empty skin. The absence felt like a wound, like relief, like the first breath after drowning, justice or destruction. Paul's words echoed in the dark. I still didn't know which one I'd chosen. Maybe there wasn't a difference anymore. Maybe there never had been. She tried to save it. I watched her try. And I realized I was watching from very far away, like a man reviewing footage of someone else's marriage. The guest room bed was too wide. That was the first thing I noticed. After 8 years of sharing a mattress, of negotiating blankets and accommodating the geography of another body, the empty space felt like an accusation. I lay there that night, the night after the confrontation, staring at the ceiling I'd never really looked at before. Guest room ceiling. The room we'd painted together when we first bought the house, laughing about color swatches, arguing playfully about whether coastal fog was really different from morning mist. We'd made it nice for visitors who rarely came. Now it was mine. Sleep didn't come. I didn't expect it to. Instead, I mapped the next 48 hours in my mind. Saturday night, the Piedmont Grand Hotel, 7 p.m., 300 guests in black tie, champagne flutes catching the light, the annual celebration of money and influence, and the polished performance of success. And somewhere in my jacket pocket, a thumb drive containing the end of my wife's world. I should have felt powerful. I should have felt righteous. The wronged husband, finally holding the sword of justice, about to deliver consequences to those who'd earned them. Instead, I felt hollow, scraped out, like someone had taken a melon baller to my chest and left the rind intact. Somewhere around 3 in the morning, sleep finally dragged me under. I dreamed of our wedding. The dream was cruel in its accuracy. I could smell the flowers. Gardenias, her mother's choice. I could hear, At Last, playing as she walked toward me. Etta James's voice wrapping around us like a promise. I could feel the weight of the ring in my palm before I slid it onto her finger. In the dream, I turned to face her at the altar, but when I lifted her veil, the face beneath wasn't Lana's. It was mine. I woke gasping, the sheets damp with sweat, the gray light of pre-dawn pressing against the window. The dream's meaning wasn't subtle. I'd married myself, my own projections, my own needs, my own desperate hope that I'd finally built something permanent. Lana had never been who I thought she was. She'd only ever been who I needed her to be. And whose fault was that? The question sat in my chest like a stone I couldn't cough up. Friday morning, 36 hours to the gala, Lana was waiting for me in the kitchen. She looked like she hadn't slept either. Pale beneath her makeup, shadows under her eyes that her concealer couldn't quite hide. She was dressed for work, but her hands shook slightly as she poured her coffee. "Brent, please, can we talk?" I poured my own coffee, didn't look at her. "We talked last night." "That wasn't talking. That was you delivering a verdict." She set down her mug. The ceramic clicked against the granite, too loud in the silence. "I made mistakes. I know that. But you don't understand what it's been like. The pressure. The feeling like I'm drowning and nobody sees it. So you stole from your company. I was going to pay it back. And you slept with another man." Her jaw tightened. "Derek understood things about me that you never... Don't." The word came out flat, tired. I didn't have the energy for anger anymore. "Don't tell me what he understood. Don't tell me what I failed to give you. You had 8 years to tell me you were unhappy. 8 years of dinners and weekends and nights in this house where you could have looked at me and said, 'Something's wrong, something's missing, I need more than this.'" I finally looked at her, really looked. Saw the exhaustion, the fear, the desperate calculation of a woman trying to find the words that would make this stop. "But you didn't," I said. "You chose secrets. You chose him. You chose to let me believe in something that didn't exist while you built your exit strategy behind my back." I shook my head. "So no, we don't get to talk about what I didn't understand. That door closed when you opened the one to his hotel room." Lana's eyes filled. Not the performative tears I'd seen before. Something raw, something that might have been genuine. "I never meant to hurt you. I believe you." And I did. That was the worst part. I believe you told yourself this was temporary, that you'd figure it out, that somehow, someday, you'd find a way to make it right without anyone getting hurt. I set down my coffee. "But that's not love, Lana. That's just cowardice with better PR." She flinched like I'd hit her. "What do you want me to do? Tell me what to do, and I'll do it. I'll end things with Derek. I'll pay back the money. It's not about what you do now. It's about what you did then." I picked up my keys. "It's about 6 months of messages, 6 months of baby and miss you and soon, 6 months of planning your escape while you kissed me goodnight and asked about my day. Brent, I loved you." The words came out quiet, surprised me with their weight. "I actually loved you. Not a version of you, not a projection, you or who I thought you were. And every single day of those 6 months, while you were lying to me, I was building a future around someone who didn't exist." I walked toward the door, stopped with my hand on the knob. "That's what you took from me, not just the marriage. The ability to trust what I feel, to believe that what I see is real." I opened the door. "I don't know how to get that back, but I know you can't give it to me." I left her standing in the kitchen. I didn't look back. Work was impossible that day. I sat in meetings I didn't hear, answered emails I wouldn't remember, moved through the building like a man walking underwater. At 4 o'clock, I drove to Marcus's apartment. He was waiting. The thumb drive sat on his desk, small, black, unremarkable, the kind of thing you might lose in a junk drawer and never miss. Except this one contained the complete demolition of a woman's life. "It's ready," Marcus said. "I've queued it to play during the donor recognition segment. Takes about 90 seconds for the full sequence. Messages, financial transfers, GPS logs, the doorbell footage from your neighbor." He paused. "Once it starts, there's no stopping it. Everyone in that room will see everything." I picked up the drive, turned it over in my hand. It weighed nothing. It weighed everything. "You don't have to do this," Marcus said quietly. "You know that, right? You could take this to a lawyer, file for divorce, let the legal system handle the criminal stuff. It would be slower, quieter, but she'd have time to prepare, time to spin it, time to make me look like the villain." I shook my head. I spent 6 months being the last person to know what was happening in my own marriage. I won't spend 6 more watching her control the narrative. Marcus leaned back, studied me with those soldier's eyes. "I've done things," he said slowly. "Over there. Things I had to do. Things that kept people alive." He paused. "But the ones that stayed with me, The ones I still see when I close my eyes, those weren't the necessary ones. They were the ones I wanted to do. The ones where the mission and the anger got mixed up and I couldn't tell which one was driving. What are you saying? I'm saying check your fuel, brother. He nodded at the thumb drive in my hand. Make sure you know what's powering this, because if it's justice, you'll sleep fine. But if it's something else, he didn't finish. He didn't have to. I drove home with the thumb drive in my pocket. Marcus's words circling in my head like vultures. Check your fuel. What was powering this? Justice? Revenge? The need to see her face when everything collapsed? The desire to feel something other than this hollow, scraping emptiness? I didn't know anymore. Maybe I never had. My phone rang. Youngstown area code. Not Tom. A different number. One I hadn't seen in years, but recognized immediately. Pastor Ellis. Brent. The voice was older now. Gravel and honey. Worn smooth by decades of Sunday sermons and hospital bedsides. Your brother told me something's happening. I'm not calling to preach. Lord knows you've heard enough of that from me over the years. I pulled into a gas station, parked, let the engine idle. Then why are you calling? To remind you of something your father told me once. A pause. The sound of an old man gathering his thoughts. We were sitting in my office. This was maybe a year before he passed. And he was worried about you. Not worried you'd fail, worried you'd succeed. I don't understand. He said that my boy Brent builds things to last. That's his gift. But I worry he's never learned how to let things fall. Pastor Ellis's voice softened. He meant you hold on too tight, son. You try to control everything. And when something breaks that you can't fix, you don't know how to grieve it. You just build something else on top of the rubble. I stared out the windshield at nothing. A woman was pumping gas 2 islands over, checking her phone, living a life untouched by this conversation. You hear me, Brent? Sometimes the righteous thing is to let it fall, to step back and let gravity do what gravity does, not to make it crash, not to engineer the destruction. It's a long breath. Revenge is a confession. It's telling the world the wound still owns you. You sure you want to make that confession in front of 300 people? I didn't answer. Couldn't. I'll be praying for you, Pastor Ellis said. Whatever you decide. But I wanted you to hear your father's voice one more time before you did it. The line went dead. I sat in that gas station parking lot for a long time. The engine idled. The sun slid toward the horizon. Inside my pocket, the thumb drive pressed against my thigh like a question I couldn't answer. Revenge is a confession. The wound still owns you. That night, I stood in my closet, our closet, though I'd stopped thinking of it that way. Looking at the suits I might wear tomorrow, navy, charcoal, the black one I'd bought for my father's funeral. On Lana's side, dresses hung in careful rows, and there, near the back, the wedding dress. Still in its garment bag, preserved like a relic of something sacred. I unzipped the bag, touched the fabric, satin and lace, slightly yellowed now, carrying the ghost of gardenias in At Last, in a future that never existed. She'd kept it. Why? Sentiment, habit, the inability to admit that the thing it represented had died long before I found them. Phone? I zipped the bag closed, left it hanging there. I could forgive her. I could let her confession be private. I could end this quietly. Lawyers, divorce papers, the slow legal unraveling of 2 lives that never should have been joined. I picked up the thumb drive, held it in my palm, but I don't want to. And that, finally, was the truth I'd been avoiding. Not that she deserved exposure, not that justice required an audience, but that some wounded, furious part of me wanted to watch her face when her world collapsed. Wanted to feel the power of being the one who ended things, for once. Wanted to take back the 6 months she'd stolen by stealing everything from her in a single night. Check your fuel. I knew what was powering this, I just didn't know if I cared anymore. The man I was wouldn't recognize the man I'm about to become. I'm not sure the man I'm about to become cares. Saturday morning, the day of the gala, I woke before dawn, if you could call it waking. I drifted through the night in that gray space between sleep and consciousness, where dreams bleed into memory, and neither one offers rest. The guest room was cold. November had settled into Charlotte overnight, the first real chill of the season pressing against the windows, like a visitor who wouldn't leave. I showered, dressed in jeans and a flannel shirt, clothes for driving, not for decisions. Clothes my father might have worn on a Saturday morning, heading out to check on something that didn't need checking, just to have the road and the silence and the space to think. Lana's door was closed when I passed it. Our door. Her door now. I didn't knock, didn't pause. Just walked down the stairs and out the front door and into a morning that smelled like dead leaves and coming frost. The car started on the first try. I pulled out of the driveway with no destination in mind, just the need to move, to put miles between myself and the house where my marriage had died. Interstate 77 North, I drove without thinking, letting the highway choose my direction. Charlotte fell away behind me, the skyline shrinking in the rearview mirror, the suburbs thinning into farmland, the billboards giving way to trees stripped bare by autumn. The radio was off. I didn't want music, didn't want voices. Didn't want anything but the hum of tires on asphalt and the gray sky pressing down, and the silence that felt like the inside of my own skull. Somewhere past Statesville, I pulled off at a rest stop, parked, facing the tree line, killed the engine. The quiet was absolute. No traffic noise, no bird song, just the tick of the cooling engine and the sound of my own breathing. I pulled out my phone, looked at the thumb drive icon, the file I'd transferred from Marcus's laptop, the evidence that would end Lana's career, her reputation, possibly her freedom. Delete, one tap. That's all it would take. Delete the file, drive home, call a divorce lawyer on Monday. Let the legal system do its slow grinding work. Let her face consequences through proper channels. Termination, criminal charges, the methodical dismantling of the life she'd built on stolen money and broken vows. My thumb hovered over the screen. That's the righteous path. That's what Dad would have done. That's what Pastor Ellis meant about letting things fall. But righteousness felt thin this morning. Abstract, like a coat that didn't fit anymore. What fit was the weight in my chest. The 6 months of messages I couldn't unread. The image of her, in that dress, smiling at herself in the mirror, rehearsing for a man who wasn't me. The sound of her voice saying he's not stupid, just trusting, like trust was a character flaw she'd successfully exploited. I put the phone away, started the engine. The wound still owns you. Maybe it did. Maybe that was okay. Maybe some wounds were supposed to own you until you did something about them. I drove for 3 more hours, no destination, just motion. The landscape changed around me, Piedmont giving way to foothills, the first hints of the Blue Ridge appearing on the horizon like a promise of something older, something that had been here long before my problems and would remain long after. Somewhere near Wilkesboro, I found myself talking out loud, not to anyone, not to God, though Pastor Ellis might have called it prayer, just talking. To the windshield, to the road, to the ghost of my father, who'd been dead 6 years, but whose voice I could still hear when the world got quiet enough. I know what you'd say, I said to the empty car. You'd say a man doesn't solve his problems by making a scene. You'd say dignity matters more than satisfaction. You'd say I'm better than this. The road unwound ahead of me. Gray asphalt, yellow lines, the skeleton trees standing witness to nothing. But you never had to sit across from Mom while she planned her escape with another man. You never had to read 6 months of messages where she called someone else baby. You never had to realize that everything you built, every sacrifice, every late night, every choice you made to provide and protect was just scenery, background for someone else's story. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. So maybe I'm not better than this. Maybe I don't want to be. Maybe just once, I want to be the one who decides how something ends. The words hung in the air. The car hummed. The miles disappeared beneath me. I didn't feel better for saying it, but I felt clearer, like something muddy had settled and I could finally see the bottom. I got back to Charlotte at 4 in the afternoon. The gala started at 7. The house was quiet when I entered. Lana's car was in the driveway, but I didn't see her. Didn't look for her. I climbed the stairs to the guest room and closed the door. The suit was hanging where I'd left it, navy, the one I'd worn to our 5th anniversary dinner, back when I still believed in anniversaries, back when I still believed in us. I showered, shaved, dressed slowly, each motion deliberate, ceremonial. The shirt, the tie, the jacket. The shoes I'd polished the night before, because that's what you do when you're about to attend the funeral of your marriage. The thumb drive went into my inside pocket. Small, light, catastrophic. I looked at myself in the mirror. The man looking back was familiar but different, older, somehow, harder around the eyes, like someone had sanded away the softness and left only the grain beneath. Who are you after you've paid the cost? Tom's question. I still didn't have an answer. I reached for my ring finger, habit, muscle memory, and found empty skin. The absence was louder than any presence had ever been. At 6:30, I descended the stairs. Lana was waiting in the foyer, the black dress. Of course. The same one from the mirror, the one that had started all of this. She looked beautiful. That was the cruelty of it. Beautiful and terrified, and trying desperately not to show either one. Brent, her voice was careful, controlled. We don't have to do this. Whatever you're planning, please. I'm begging you. I looked at her, really looked, tried to find the woman I'd married beneath the woman who'd betrayed me, tried to feel something other than this cold, settled clarity. You should have thought about that 6 months ago. I walked past her, opened the front door, and stepped out into the November evening. The air was sharp. The first frost of the season had arrived overnight, and everything was The grass, the cars, the world itself glittered with a thin layer of ice. Behind me, I heard Lana follow. Heard her car door open and close. We were driving separately, arriving separately, leaving separately, if she left at all. The Piedmont Grand Hotel was 20 minutes away. 300 people waiting. Champagne, chandeliers. The annual celebration of success and money and the polished performance of professional life. And in my pocket, a thumb drive containing the end of all of it. I started the car. Pulled out of the driveway. Justice or destruction. Tonight, I'd find out if there was a difference. 300 people, in black tie, champagne in hand, about to witness the end of someone's world. They just didn't know whose yet. The Piedmont Grand Hotel rose against the November sky like a monument to old money and new ambition. Limestone facade, brass fixtures, the kind of place where Charlotte's elite gathered to congratulate themselves on their success while writing checks large enough to feel generous. I handed my keys to the valet, adjusted my tie, walked through the gilded doors into a world that had never quite felt like mine, no matter how many years I'd spent learning its language. The ballroom was already crowded. String quartet in the corner, playing something classical and inoffensive. Waiters circulating with champagne flutes and canapes. Men in tuxedos and women in gowns, all of them performing the same elaborate dance of networking and status that defined events like this. I took a glass of champagne I wouldn't drink, started moving through the crowd, locate the targets. Derek Vance was easy to spot. By the bar, already on his third drink by the look of it, laughing too loud at something a colleague had said. He looked good in his tuxedo, charming. The kind of man who'd learned early that a firm handshake and white teeth could open doors that talent alone couldn't. That's who she chose. That's what I lost her to. I felt nothing. Not anger, not jealousy. Just a cold recognition, like identifying a species of insect you'd read about but never seen in person. Lana was harder to find. I finally spotted her near the silent auction tables, talking to a woman I didn't recognize, her posture rigid beneath the performance of ease. The black dress caught the chandelier light. She looked beautiful and brittle, like something that might shatter if you touched it wrong. She saw me across the room. Our eyes met. I watched her excuse herself from the conversation, watched her start moving toward me with the desperate determination of a woman trying to stop a train with her bare hands. I turned away, headed for the tech booth. The AV setup was tucked behind a velvet curtain at the back of the ballroom. 2 laptops, a mixing board, a bored-looking technician in a headset scrolling through his phone. Hey, I flashed the smile I'd learned in 1,000 business meetings. I'm with Hartwick Logistics. We're one of the platinum sponsors tonight. I've got a short video tribute I need to add to the donor recognition segment. Last minute thing. You know how it goes. The technician barely looked up. Sure, USB? I handed him the thumb drive. He plugged it in without ceremony, without suspicion, without any awareness that he was loading a bomb into the evening's program. It'll play after the Henderson Foundation clip, he said. About 15 minutes. Perfect. I stepped back through the curtain. My heart was steady. My hands were dry. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear Lana's voice calling my name, but the crowd was thick and I let it swallow me. 15 minutes. I found a spot near the back of the ballroom where the lighting was dim and the shadows offered cover. From here, I could see everything. The stage where Richard Holt would soon deliver his annual remarks. The screen where donor names would scroll in grateful recognition. The crowd that had no idea what was coming. My phone buzzed. Marcus, you don't have to do this. There's still time. I typed back, I know, I didn't say more. There wasn't more to say. The string quartet finished their piece. Polite applause rippled through the room. Richard Holt, 64, silver-haired, the kind of man who'd been wealthy so long he'd forgotten what money felt like, took the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. His voice faded into background noise. I wasn't listening. I was watching Lana push through the crowd, her eyes scanning frantically, searching for me. She found me just as the lights dimmed for the presentation. Brent, she grabbed my arm. Her fingers dug in hard enough to bruise. Please, whatever you're about to do, don't. I'm begging you. You're hurting my arm. She didn't let go. Her eyes were wet, mascara threatening to run, the mask finally cracking in a way I'd never seen before. I know I destroyed us. I know what I did. But this won't just hurt me. It'll hurt everyone. Derek's wife, his kids. The people at Mercer Holt who had nothing to do with... Derek has a wife? The question stopped her cold. What? You said Derek's wife, his kids. I tilted my head. You were planning to leave me for a man who's also married. With children. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. It's complicated. He was going to, let me guess, leave her, after the deal closed, after the timing was right. I almost laughed. He was feeding you the same lines you were feeding me. On stage, Richard Holt was wrapping up his remarks. The donor recognition segment was about to begin. Brent, please. Her voice cracked. I'll do anything, whatever you want. Just don't. I want you to watch. The screen flickered to life behind us. The first slide was innocent enough. Henderson Foundation. Thank you for your generosity. Polite applause. Then the screen changed. Text messages, 20 feet tall. Lana's words, projected in crisp white font against a black background for 300 people to read. Baby, I miss you so much. He doesn't suspect anything. He's so trusting it almost makes me feel guilty. Almost. Can't wait until this is over. Can't wait until it's just us. The applause died. The room went silent. That specific silence of people who don't yet understand what they're seeing but know something has gone terribly wrong. Lana's hand fell away from my arm. No, she whispered. No, no, no. The messages kept scrolling. 6 months of intimacy, projected for everyone she'd ever worked with, ever impressed, ever wanted to impress. Here's another 8K. Should hold them off until the quarterly. And I'm pulling from escrow now. If anyone audits before Q3, we're done. I love you, Derek. I've never felt this way about anyone. I heard the name ripple through the crowd like a stone dropped in still water. Derek Vance, the sales manager. Him? On the other side of the ballroom, Derek was already moving. Not toward Lana, toward the exit. Head down, shoulders hunched, abandoning the woman he'd promised a future to without a single backward glance. That's the man you chose. That's who you burned our marriage for. The screen shifted to financial records, wire transfers, account numbers, dollar amounts that made people gasp, not because they were large, but because they recognized what they meant. Embezzlement. Fraud. The systematic theft from a company that had trusted her. Richard Holt's face had gone the color of old paper. His lawyers were already pulling out phones. Then the final sequence. GPS logs. Doorbell footage from Diane Whitmore's camera. Grainy but unmistakable. Lana leaving my house in workout clothes. Lana returning hours later. Lana's car parked at hotels across Charlotte, while her phone told me she was at yoga, at the office, at her mother's. The room erupted. Not in anger. In chaos. Phones out, recording, voices rising. The string quartet froze in mid-bow, their instruments silent. And in the center of it all, Lana. Surrounded by colleagues who were backing away like she was contagious. Alone, in a crowd of 300 people who now knew exactly who she was. I walked toward her. The crowd parted. Of course it did. Everyone wanted to see what happened next. She looked up at me, mascara running, lips trembling. The black dress suddenly looking less like seduction and more like a funeral shroud. Why? She whispered. Why couldn't you just let me go? I reached into my pocket, pulled out the wedding ring I'd carried since Thursday night. You said you weren't going anywhere. I placed the ring in her palm, closed her fingers around it. Turns out you were already gone. I let go of her hand, turned, walked through the silent crowd, through the gilded doors, out into the November night where the frost had settled on everything and the air was so cold it hurt to breathe. Behind me, I could hear the chaos continuing. Voices, accusations, the sound of a life collapsing in real time. I didn't look back. The valet brought my car. I tipped him $20, pulled out of the circular drive and onto the empty street. The windshield was foggy. I turned on the defroster and watched the glass slowly clear, revealing the road ahead. Dark, quiet, leading nowhere in particular. I waited to feel something. Triumph, satisfaction. The righteous glow of justice delivered. Instead, I felt empty, scraped clean, like a house after the movers have taken everything, and all that's left are the marks on the walls, where pictures used to hang. You can burn down a lie and still not find the truth. The thought came unbidden. My own voice, but older, wiser, the voice of the man I'd become tonight, whoever that was. I drove home alone. 3 months later, I still reach for a ring that isn't there. I'm learning to leave the space empty. February. The frost had broken 2 weeks ago, and Charlotte was beginning to remember what warmth felt like. Not spring yet. That was still a month away, but as something softer. Something that whispered of endings that weren't really endings at all. I stood in the backyard of the house that used to be ours. The sale had closed last week. New family moving in tomorrow. Young couple, first baby on the way. Eyes full of the same hope I'd once carried through these same doors. I hoped they'd be luckier than I was. Or at least more honest with each other. The gym bag was gone. Lana was gone. Last I heard, she was staying with her sister in Richmond, awaiting trial. Her name now searchable in ways that would follow her forever. Derek had disappeared the night of the gala and hadn't resurfaced. His wife filed for divorce 3 days later. The bookies, I assumed, eventually found him. That wasn't my concern anymore. The second phone was still here. I'd kept it. Not as evidence. Marcus had copies of everything, and the prosecutors had what they needed. I'd kept it because some things require burial, not deletion. Some things need to be placed in the ground and left there where the earth can do its slow work of forgetting. I knelt in the corner of the yard, the corner where we'd once talked about planting a garden, tomatoes maybe, or herbs, something alive and growing that we could tend together. The garden never happened. The phone did. The soil was cold but soft. I had dug with my hands, feeling the dirt collect under my fingernails, feeling something ancient in the motion. When the hole was deep enough, I placed the phone inside. Rose gold case, cracked screen, 6 months of someone else's future. Now just plastic and glass and silence. I covered it over, patted the earth flat. The garden never happened. But maybe something else will grow here. Something I can't predict or control. Something that belongs to whoever comes next. I stood, brushed the dirt from my knees. My thumb moved to my ring finger. Habit, reflex, the ghost of 8 years still haunting my nervous system. The skin was bare, pale where the band used to sit, a tan line that was finally starting to fade. I let my hand fall. You can't rebuild a man from rubble, I thought. You have to start with something that was never hers to break. I didn't know what that something was yet. Maybe I'd find it. Maybe I wouldn't. Maybe the finding wasn't the point. Maybe the point was just the willingness to look. I drove away from this house for the last time. Not north, toward Youngstown in the past. East, toward the coast. Toward salt air, an open horizon, and whatever waited beyond the edge of what I could see. The radio was on. An old song playing. Something I didn't recognize. Something without memory attached. I turned it up anyway. The road unwound ahead of me. Gray asphalt giving way to pine forests giving way to marshland giving way to the distant glitter of the sea. She was dressing for someone. I just didn't know it wasn't me. That was the first thought, the one that started everything. He's driving towards something. He just doesn't know what it is yet. That was the last one. Somewhere between these two, a man I used to be had burned down a lie and walked away from the ashes. The man I was becoming didn't have a name yet, didn't have a shape, just a direction and the willingness to see what happened next. The sun was setting over the water when I finally stopped. I got out of the car, stood at the edge of the sand, let the cold wind off the Atlantic wash over me like absolution, like erasure, like the first breath of something I couldn't name. I didn't feel healed, but I felt cleared. For now, that was enough.